since 1970. Should make for a run and a lot of fun the rest of the way. Then we get Thursday night and Saturday night games this week. LA and Las Vegas. Justin Herbert, of course, dealing with that index finger. He'll be out for the rest of the season. We do have 3 Saturday games involving teams in the playoff hunt, and that'll be over on the NFL Network. Steelers and Colts, short numbers. They're all really short numbers, so it should make for good games. Broncos, the biggest underdog on this slate, catching 4.5 points in Motown against the struggling Lions. So if we get to ATS records with Pete and Brady Quinn. Now, look at that overall record, 99, 104, and 6. That is thanks in large part to Pete. A really good week, 10, 5, and 1. Feeling good about that, Pete?
Yeah, I did. And if I could only get a best bet every now and then, that would be a nice thing to do. And look, we both stink. Let's put it that way. Look, we're both under 500, but look at this.
Oh, Reggie Miller.
Wow, somebody.
The graphics team getting heavy there.
Yeah,
and
that's pretty good. I got big ears now. But
wait, does that make Brady Quinn Spike Lee then, if that's the
wow,
there, the lead right there?
Wow.
So I have Pete on chat. Let's bring in Brady Quinn, who had that lead. Brady, what do you think about that graphic there with Pete Prisco and the Reggie Miller deal? Because you had the lead, and as of right now, you guys are in a dead heat.
The game's not over. I mean, that's the odd thing is that happened at the final moments of the game between the Pistons and the Knicks, and the Pacers and the Knicks, excuse me. And at this point, I mean, we've got a lot of football left to be played. I feel like the San Francisco 49ers, where I was so dominant early in the season, went through a lull, had to battle through some injuries, and now we're going to be on the backside of that as we finish the last month of the season. So kudos to Pete. He had a great week last week. He's trying to actually kick me down and bring me down with him. But this is the week where we ascend now and we move right back in front of Pete Prisco.
I mean, the reality is we both stink, okay?
Right. No, there's nothing flattering about the overall record.
We're under 500, both of us, and I can't pick a best bet for the life of me. Otherwise, I'd have a pretty good lead in the entire thing. It's terrible. What am I, 4-9? Is that what it is? That's awful. So maybe I'll get a best bet right this week.
It's a little bit like Lean Like Love that we play on Sundays, because you put out a lot of loves out there. They don't always cash, as Brady knows. So it's a little bit like best bets.
Well, he never puts out any loves.
It's okay. He's as we've grown into the game.
1, I think. 2 all year, 2.
Yeah, I'm usually with you guys on Sundays, and it's interesting because you guys talk about your midweek picks, so I get to experience the thought process early that'll eventually play out late on Sundays as well. So let's first start about that Thursday night game. No Justin Herbert. It's going to be Easton Stick. So the Chargers are catching 3 at Vegas. And Pete, I'll start with you. Which side are you on? Because Vegas was catching 3 against Minnesota, and that total was never really ever in doubt.
Yeah, but this is Vikings defense. And I think that when you look at the Raiders, they didn't play well offensively last week, but the Vikings defense can get after the quarterback. This defense isn't very good. And so I do like the Raiders in this spot. Easton Stick. I mean, at least Aiden O'Connell's played. Easton Stick is coming off the bench now. He's going to start the game. I think it's a problem. They haven't been great on offense either on that side of the ball, even when Herbert was in there. So they scored 6 points against New England a couple weeks ago. So I'm going to take the Raiders minus the points.
I'm on the other side of this one, Pete, so already a disagreement, which should make for a fun week. But I don't know how much better the Raiders roster is, despite the fact that they're taking on a Chargers team without Justin Herbert. I understand there's a lot of pressure on Brandon Staley and whether or not he's coaching for his job right now for the rest of the season. And for Antonio Pierce, we saw initially that bounce the first couple of games once he took over as an interim head coach. It's been kind of anything but since. And I think in this one, these two teams are way too evenly matched for how they've played this season. So I'll take the 3 points. I think the Chargers can keep this one close. I think this one is going to be a close game. And by the way, at this over-under at 34, I do think we will hit the over. This thing's going to be somewhere in the 20 to 17 range, where it's at least a push, if not a little bit closer than that.
You know what this means? We're different on a Thursday night game. That means I get the late night text if mine goes rotten from Brady, which I always do. 1-0 for the week.
Which last week you liked Pittsburgh, though, right?
Yeah.
So you got off to a good start on Thursday.
Well, I had Pittsburgh too, though.
Okay, and the over, though, did cash by halftime in that game at 30.5, and again, we're getting one now in the mid-30s. All right, let's get to the aforementioned Vikings, which are catching 3.5 points at Cincinnati. taking a look at Nick Mullins, Josh Dobbs, obviously, he got benched in that game at Allegiant Stadium for Nick Mullins. Jake Browning on the other side. So how do you sort of handicap this game, Pete?
Look at the quarterbacks in the first two games we're talking about. I mean, my gosh, we wonder why the league has so much parity this year. We're talking about Jake Browning, and he's played well. Now against Nick Mullins, who has had some moments, but they're backup quarterbacks. It kind of takes away from what we want to see on the field. But I'm going to lean to Jake Browning in this game. I think he's played well enough. I am concerned about the Vikings defense, which has been very good. Brian Flores has done a great job. But I'm going to take the Bengals minus the points. I think Browning will play well here. He's got those weapons on the outside. They're capable of just taking short passes and turn them into big plays against the blitzing team. So I'm going to take the Bengals minus the points.
Once again, Pete, I'm on the other side of you here. I'll take the 3.5 points here in the Minnesota Vikings, and it's a bit of a risk considering it's Nick Mullins' first start for the Minnesota Vikings, really since they acquired him in 2022. But there's a reason why Kevin O'Connell went after Nick Mullins. He knows the system. If he was healthy earlier this season, he would have been the backup who went to start for the injured Kirk Cousins instead of Josh Dobbs. And you mentioned Brian Flores' pressure defense. I don't know that they're going to pressure so much this week. I think more disguise, confusion, things like that might get after Jake Browning a little bit. So I think the hook's going to ultimately end up getting you. I'll take the 3.5 points in the Minnesota Vikings in what I would deem to be a lower scoring affair. I
never thought we would be talking about Nick Mullins and also have a graphic of Duck Hodges. It's like 2019 all over again with Duck Hodges with the Steelers, Nick Mullins with the Niners. Backup quarterbacks have been the story here this season. All right, let's get to Pittsburgh. We mentioned that short number, plus 2.5 is what the Steelers are catching against the Colts here. Brady, I'll give you first word because you and Peter are actually on the same page where there's not going to be a change in terms of making up or distancing yourself here. Which side are you on in this game?
The under. That would be the side that I'm on that I like the best here. But no, in all seriousness, I'll go ahead and lay the 2.5 points in the Indianapolis Colts playing at home. I don't know how confident you can feel about Mitchell Trubisky leading this team with the way the offense have looked with him at quarterback. And on top of that, with TJ Watt, there's a lot of presumptions that maybe he suffered a concussion last week, and that's being investigated. And the defense hasn't even been playing quite as well since really Trubisky has taken over and the injuries occurred to Kenny Pickett. So for me, it's a bit too much. I think Minshew finds a way of making some magic, even though Pete probably disagrees with that, to make something happen here, and they cover the 2.5.
Okay, so it's 3 straight games where we have 2 backup quarterbacks in the game. I mean, it's unreal. Just think about that.
We had 11 start on Sunday, by the way.
This is 3 straight where both are backups. It's amazing. I'm going to go with the Colts here. I don't like what I saw from the Steelers on either side of the ball. We've talked about their offense a lot, but the defense is not playing very well right now either, and the linebackers are all banged up. That shows up on a weekly basis. I'm going to take the Colts here. Minshew didn't play well last week. It wasn't awful, but he didn't play that well. I thought he got dinged in the head, and they kept him in the game. Remember, there was a big shot to his head, and he stayed in the game. He looked a little wobbly, so maybe that impacted him, but I think he plays better here. I'll take the Colts.
Okay, you guys are both on the same side in terms of the Colts laying just under a field goal against the Steelers. And then to wrap up that Saturday slate here, the largest spread of Saturday, which isn't a lot. It's 4.5 here. Denver at Detroit. Pete, you and I were talking on Sunday about the need for Detroit to pick things up here. Do you think they get it this week?
I do. And Denver in a tough situation. 3 straight roadies. And, I always say back-to-back roadies. Yeah. This is 3 straight roadies, and this one's outside the division after a division game. That's a challenge. I think back home, Jared Goff and the offense will get it going again. I'm going to take the Lions minus the points.
On the other side here, Pete, I'll take the 4.5 points in the Denver Broncos. This is a team that's really surging and playing much better football in the second half of the season. It looks like a playoff team the way Russell Wilson is able to connect, in particular, downfield to Cortland Sutton. And the defense has improved. And on the flip side, it's been anything but that for Detroit. And I know they come home, and Jared Goff plays better when he's in a dome. And that's basically what their season looks like from here on out. But I'm more concerned about the defense for their Detroit Lions. They've struggled of late. I think they're going to struggle to stop some of the big plays and the ground game of the Denver Broncos. So I'm not saying they win it, but I think the Broncos keep this one close. I'll take the 4.5 points.
We could know by kickoff of Sunday morning
where you guys are at,
good week or not.
Because you got the 3 Saturday games. You'll have Thursday, which will make it 4.
And we differ on a bunch of these. So
you do, except for the Colts play there again Thursday night, and then 3 Saturday games on opposite sides of Brady, Quinn, and Pete Prisco, except for Steelers and Colts this Saturday. Welcome back to CBS Sports HQ. Taking a look at the 1 p.m. games on CBS Houston, Tennessee, C.J. Stroud in concussion protocol. Titans fresh off that 14-point late comeback in Miami Monday Night Football. By the way, the Browns can secure, if I could say that 3 times fast, secure their second winning season under Kevin Stefanski with a win against Chicago. But also, let's get into Jets and Dolphins. That'll be on CBS. Back here with Brady, Quinn, and Pete Prisco. So the look-ahead line, and even up until about 3 minutes left to go at Hard Rock, had Miami favored over the Jets by 11.5. Now, there's also injuries to Miami. We certainly know that. But now the line has dipped all the way to 8.5. Pete, you and Brady are actually still on the same side as the underdog here. What did you make of the line movement in this game, and why do you still want to maybe grab the points here?
Well, I think when you look at this Miami team, particularly on offense, they are so banged up. You know, what showed up in that game on Monday night, not having Connor Williams when he went out, now he's out for the year, their starting center. That's a good player in the middle of their line. They were missing Armstead and another offensive lineman already in that game. Then you have Tyreek Hill go down. So you have all those issues on offense. And then when Levis is driving them down, they couldn't pressure the quarterback. Where was they missed Jalen Phillips. So injuries are starting to impact Miami. The Jets are playing better. Zach Wilson played better last week, you know, throwing for over 300 yards. The defense can get after it. I think they'll contain Tua. I'm going to take the Jets and the points in this game.
Pete, I'm right there with you. There's got to be injury concerns for Miami, who's lost some players on defense, too, just besides Jalen Phillips. So they're playing banged up. This has been a Jets defense that's been successful versus most quarterbacks with their ability to stop the run, get some not stop the run, but get some pressure, get some penetration, and really cover up on the outside. So I think they can keep this more of a lower scoring affair, at least on that side. And then on the flip side, Zach Wilson, we just talked about him, seems to be playing much more confidently, maybe, carefree. Now knowing that I don't think Robert Saleh can bench him again the rest of this year. This is his team moving forward, and he's not scared to make any sort of mistakes. So I think with all the injuries right now for Miami, that divisional game like this, that number's just too bloated. I'll take the 8.5 points.
You know, that Black Friday game, as I mentioned, the first one we've ever had, Miami was favored by 9.5 at MetLife. But again, things have changed.
But remember, it was close right up until the Hail Mary at the end of the half. I mean, it was a close game.
Could have swung a different way, sure. But I'm just saying in terms of the contrast there, again, less than what they were on the road just a few weeks ago. All right, let's get to Kansas City here. Nearly a 10-point favorite over the Patriots. Now, questions of a bounce back, whether the Chiefs can do that again, coming off that Bills loss at Arrowhead. On the flip side, for multiple times this year, the question about Bill Belichick. We know Germany was a question of whether he'd come back. Now there's still rumors and swirls about his future there in Foxborough. Brady, what's the sense of this game, given we know New England's not very good, the Chiefs are good, but they haven't been good as of late?
I think if you look at this line, too, it's a little bit fishy to me. I think in most cases, you might feel like the Chiefs, even though they're on the road playing in Foxborough, should be a double-digit favorite. And maybe this is just an overreaction to what took place this past week versus the Bills, but I also think you got to give a lot of credit to Bailey Zappi, who stepped up, who looked much more confident playing for the Patriots offense last week. And look, this New England defense has been good. And I think if you eliminate Kelsey, this team has shown you that they're just not capable of having a reliable target on the outside. And also, the offensive line hasn't played particularly well, especially on the edges. So I think this is a game where 9.5 points against Bill Belichick at home. Kind of going back to that card, but I'm going to play it. And I also I think of this as any way of the Patriots covering that number. It has to be a lower scoring game. They cannot win in a shootout, given that they've struggled to score points here. So I got the Patriots at 9.5 points here, Pete. Yeah,
I think it'll be a low scoring game as well, but I still think that Kansas City's going to cover the number, 23-10 maybe, win by 13. I just think angry Mahomes is a good Mahomes. I think the team is going to kind of rally around that. Brady's right, though. They have not played well. We were there, Tommy. They have not played well on offense. That's not a great Buffalo defense, and they had problems scoring points last week. I think they're going to have trouble scoring points here, but they're going to get short fields because the Bailey Zappi situation, yeah, he played good against Pittsburgh. He's not going to play well in this game because he's a backup quarterback, and Brady knows how I feel about backup quarterbacks. They have a little bit of a shelf life expiration date coming on Bailey Zappi. I'm going to take the Chiefs minus points. So that's probably
part of your handicap, too. You don't think the back door is really in play with Zappi?
No, I don't.
Is that what you're thinking
I think the Chiefs' defense is actually pretty good. You know that. They played well. We saw them the other day. They played well in that game. So I do think that they'll keep him relatively in check.
Okay, that total at 37. And again, Brady liking the under, Pete agreeing there. Let's get to a shorter number here with the Titans laying 2.5 against Houston. Now, I had mentioned C.J. Stroud, and he got hit. We were talking about it, breaking it down. Late in that game was already out of the mix there for Houston against the Jets here. But 2.5 to me, Pete, sounds like the Stroud stuff is baked in for now. So as it stands right now, do you want to grab the 2.5? Do you want to lay it? What side are you on here?
I'm going to take the Titans. I do think that he's going to have a tough time. We've seen that all year long, clearing concussion protocol. Some guys have done it, but most have not. So I think it's going to be Davis Mills. As much as I like Davis Mills, I think I like the quarterback on the other side more. I think Will Levis is going to be a star. I really do. And not just based, I thought that before the draft, but watching him on Monday night, that was an NFL quarterback right there who could make all the throws, stood in the pocket, will take the shots. And I do think that the Texans are playing back-to-back road games. They didn't look great on defense last week. I think this is an opportunity for Will Levis to continue to build on his game from Monday night, and I think the Titans will win the game.
Yeah, Pete, I'm with you on this one. I'll go ahead and lay the 2.5 points with the Tennessee Titans. Look, the pass defense for the Texans is really struggling. If they don't have Stroud, they don't have any shot. And I will say this. Look, I know Stroud went out later on in that game. However, he's been able to make some miraculous fourth-quarter comebacks. And so that was one of those wins that Pete got over top of me, amongst some others where he had some other quarterbacks who didn't play. I mean,
that wasn't happening. That was not happening.
Went out. All of a sudden, Pete got a win there. So I'm just saying, Pete got a little lucky last week with some of our differences.
That's not lucky. They weren't winning that game. There was no, even if he's in the game, they're not winning the game. They're not winning.
I'm not counting him out the way he's played this year, in particular in the fourth quarter. But I'll say this much, to your point about Davis Mills, if he's in there, clearly this team doesn't have the same type of juice. And that's really what I want to point out about the Tennessee Titans. It seems like Will Levis has really sparked a fire underneath this team. The way Hopkins is playing, and I think he understands he's going to get the ball more downfield, as does everyone else in the passing game with that arm for Will Levis. So I'm laying the 2.5 points here. I think this game also hits the over. 37.5 is a little bit too low, especially if Stroud ends up playing in this one. So I'll also like the over as a bet.
My man is scrambling a little bit, isn't he? I mean, he's reaching.
He's dropping shot.
He's reaching. He's reaching.
Oh, look at this.
Look at this.
Whoa, Ross
Brady.
Tucker. Will Levis, the most shredded QB ever. And then BQ with
Brady.
Woo.
How vain can one get? I mean, my gosh, Brady.
I'm not sure why you're asking me, Pete. I mean, it's just a photograph.
I mean, but you put it up there. Take a look at me. Look at me.
Oh, I didn't say take a look at me. I was just making sure Ross Tucker got the question right.
I mean, where would you rank yourself in the RIP quarterback list of all time?
I wouldn't. I don't do that.
Not of all time, but replying to that. By the way, you also took the Twitter.
I'll put it this way. I'll put Cam Newton up there at number 1. I don't think the league has ever seen an Adonis at the quarterback spot like Cam Newton, okay? There's never been anyone who's that big and is built like that before. And for anyone who shook his hand, he's the tallest 6'6" I've ever seen in my life, or whatever they have him listed as. He's taller than that. He's like those centers in the NBA that they say, oh, they're 6'12" instead of saying they're 7 foot. I don't know how he's only 6'6" or 6'7", whatever he's listed at. He seems way taller than that.
It's so funny because the first time I ever walked onto their practice field in training camp when he was a rookie, and I looked over and he's in the huddle, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that kid looks like he's bigger than all the tackles. He's enormous. He was an enormous man playing quarterback. It was incredible.
By the way, you were pro Levis coming out of the draft. You put to Twitter a little bit of stuff. What was the reaction to you talking about Will Levis on Monday night, Pete?
It reminds me of Josh Allen, and it reminded me of Josh Allen when he came out. Everybody who was all this, I call them the Twitter cult. They follow each other, the Twitter draft cult. You know, everybody says the same thing, and nobody ever veers off because they're scared. And it was the same way with Josh Allen. They killed Josh Allen. The first year, killed him. And then all of a sudden, they had to start saying, well, maybe this kid is really good. Same with Levis coming out. And they didn't do the research on him. And now he's starting to make plays, and he looks good. And they're starting to say, well, let's see how it plays out. And I'm getting ahead of it.
So, Brady, you want a final word here?
Pete, yeah, let's just pause for a second. I mean, year 3 was really Josh Allen's year where he blew up in year 3. That's when they got Stephon Diggs. So I'm not trying to play the chicken and the egg here. I'm just saying it helps when you have people around you. Buffalo did that for Josh Allen, and I think he was able to really excel. No different than Will Levis here. Without DeAndre Hopkins, probably is a lot different the way this looks. If they keep building that around him, there's no doubt he'll have a shot to be extremely special given his skill set and his intangibles.
Okay, let's move on to another game here. We have the Bears catching 3.5 at Cleveland with a total of 37 and a hook. Both you guys are on the same side. Pete, you have been beating the drum on this Cleveland team. Why are you back in the Browns, and does it have to do with Joe Flacco and his play of late?
Joe Flacco's played well. I mean, you got to give him credit. He's come off the sidelines and played well. I went back and watched that game on 22 tape, and I'm sitting there going, man, that kid looks like he's 25 years old again, and he can still rip it with that arm. And I think what Kevin Stefanski has done with this team doesn't get enough credit. It really doesn't. I mean, this could have fallen apart. And I know the defense has been good, but they've had moments where they haven't been as good either in recent weeks. So I just think they'll step back up here against the Bears offense, and they'll play much better. I like the Browns in this spot.
I'm right there with you, Pete. I think, again, their defense and the way it's been able to complement, too, what they're offensively doing with Flacco at quarterback, taking care of the football, big shots down the field, and just making that wise, smart decision. It's one of the reasons why he's been able to work out so well, too, as a starting quarterback, and will be the starting quarterback for the remainder of the season. So a little bit of concerns, too, how this defense ends up playing against Justin Fields, and if they can stop some of the mobility that he brings as a runner at the quarterback position. Obviously, his connection with DJ Morris continued to grow once he came back healthy and as this group has worked together. But the Browns defense at home is tough, and this is a team that's fighting for a playoff spot, so it will be rocking there in Cleveland for this one. I'm laying the 3.5 points.
All right, again, 37.5 is the total. You know, I'm just looking at my notes, guys. Usually we have like 1 or 2 games in the 30s, the rest are in the 40s. With all these backup quarterbacks, we have so many games in the mid to high 30s, which is certainly different this season around. All right, let's get to another game that has a field goal and a hook in mind here. That's going to be the Tampa Bay Bucks in Lambeau to take on the Green Bay Packers. So Baker Mayfield catching 3. I know they had a home game against Carolina. It seems like the Bucks have been on the road a lot here. On the flip side, Green Bay with a chance to win against the Giants. Pete, what are you thinking here with a 3 and a hook?
Yeah, and they're playing back-to-back road games, the Bucks. And here's one outside the division, right? They control their own fate now. They win out, they win the division. Think about that. The Bucks will win the division if they win out. That was a big win for them last week, but back out again against the Packers team coming off a tough loss. I think that's hard to do when you're outside the division. Jordan Love didn't play well early in that game, but he did get them down to the field and got what should have been the game-winning touchdown. The defense let him down. I think he responds here, plays much better. I'll take the Packers minus the points.
I'm taking the Packers minus the points as well in this case. Love's played well, but it's also the Tampa Bay Bucks pass defense has not been really that strong this year, in particular when you allow Desmond Ridder to go off the way he did last week. I know the Atlanta Falcons lost, and Baker Mayfield and the Bucks were able to find a way of winning, but it doesn't give me much confidence in the Buccaneers defense on the road being able to stop what we're seeing right now from Jordan Love, this younger passing attack. So I'll gladly lay the points here. I think the Packers defense, too, will get after Baker Mayfield, especially if they're playing from behind.
And then lastly here, we talked about the Falcons losing to the Bucks. They're road favorites at Carolina. 3 is the number. Brady here, too much, too little, or just right for you? What side?
Just right for me. I'm laying the 3 points with the Atlanta Falcons. I think they'll be able to run all over the Carolina Panthers. And on top of that, lower scoring game. I don't see the Panthers scoring much in this one. The Falcons defense, despite the fact last week Tampa Bay being able to get a nice win against them, I still think they're up for the challenge versus Bryce Young. He just looks like a shell of himself from what we saw in Alabama, and they're not fixing it, at least not at this point in time in the season. So I'll lay the 3 points there with Atlanta.
Yeah, I don't know if they're ever fixing it, but that's a whole nother story. The Carolina can't score at all. I mean, they're terrible on offense, and they seem to be getting worse by the week. Atlanta will show up and play a little bit better here. That was a tough loss for Atlanta last week. I think they bounce back and they cover this number on the road.
You know, this segment here is we're taking a look at most rushing yards among rookies with Bijan Robinson just under 800. We've entered the what we call here the B block, you know, and this is the conclusion of the first half. We've now entered the second half. And if you've heard a theme, this is where you guys are not getting a lot of separation because you guys have been on the same side of a lot of games. So we're going to have to wait a little bit longer for you guys to have picks that you guys are differing on here. Let's get to the Giants catching 6 at New Orleans with 37.5. The number. Again, you guys are on the same side. Do you want to lay it with Derek Carr and the Saints feeling good about it, or what we saw from the Giants catching 6?
You know, I'm bucking the trend, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm going against Tommy Cutlets, and I don't like to do that. Tommy, sorry, you know, fellow Paisan, I hate to do that, but I'm going to. I think this is a tough spot for him. You go out you win a big Monday night game, and everybody, you're the toast of the town, and he did some really good things. But now you go on the road, a tough environment against a defense that can get after you. I'm going to take the Saints. I don't really believe Derek Carr's playing that well, but I do think their defense made some big plays last week. They got a special teams play for a touchdown, so I'm going to take the Saints in this spot.
I'm right there with you, although I like the under as the best play in this particular matchup because of some of the things Pete touched on. Obviously, Tommy DeVito, as a rookie, going to a hostile, tough environment versus a good defense. On the flip side, the Giants' defense has played pretty well. So this one, to me, is going to be a little bit more of a lower scoring affair. But I'll lay the points here with the Saints. I think you may see some rookie mistakes start to showcase themselves. And unfortunately for Pete and the Paisan passion, we'll see how much is left over after this one.
What did you think of the suit, Pete, by the way? All black?
No, he wore a red.
No, his agent.
Yeah.
I'm saying.
Yeah. I mean, they
all for show, you think?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No question.
Right. Let's get to the Commanders catching 6.5 here against the Rams in a total of 49.5. Boy, what a game the Rams played with Baltimore. Could have pulled away with that one. Didn't get it, of course, out in overtime here. So the playoff chances are certainly hindered with that loss here, Pete, but just under a touchdown back home here against the Commanders.
Well, but I tell you what, their schedule's favorable the next 3 weeks before they play the Niners in the final week of the season. If they could win the next 3 and the Niners lay down in week 18, they have a chance to get in. Sean McVay has done a wonderful job with this team. The offense can score points. The Commanders, we know they can't stop anybody because they have all kinds of issues. You know, they fired their defensive coordinator, still can't stop anybody. So I think they get a little loose in this game, and I'm going to take the Rams.
I'm right there with you. I'm laying the points here with the Rams at home, but I love the over, too. Talked about this game getting loose. We know Washington can put up some production, put up some points, and we know the Rams can do the same, especially versus this Washington defense the way they've played. So love the over, and also think the LA Rams cover the number as they try to bide for one of those wild card playoff spots when it's all said and done.
That'll be Sunday, the late window on CBS. Now let's get to Pete Prisco's #1 team in the power rankings. Odds makers certainly have the Niners power rated as the #1 team. On the road, in the desert, it's just south of 2 touchdowns, 13.5, Pete. Do you buy into a blowout in Glendale, or do you think maybe the Cards can keep it close?
Normally, you know, I hate laying big numbers, but I think this 49ers team is playing at such a high level. I'm going to lay the points. I think they go down there. It's not going to be, you know, 35-3, but, you know, they'll cover this number at some point. They'll get to it. They didn't last week. They had a big number last week. Looked like they were going to cover it. Didn't cover it. I think this week they do cover it, although the Cardinals are coming off a bye, so they're a little well-rested. They play hard. Give Cardinals credit. They play a lot of close games. They play hard, and they won the last time out.
I think this is going to be a lower scoring, tight game because of that rest you talked about, the Arizona Cardinals, and the fact they're divisional opponents, and San Francisco's got to go on the road. So I think the under is the best play here, but I'll lay the 13.5 points. Brock Purdy's been playing phenomenal so far. Call him a game manager, call him an MVP candidate, whatever you want. I'm sure he'll gladly take it as long as they get that #1 overall seed and a trip to a Super Bowl. So I'll lay the 13.5 points here with a team that looks to be the very best team right now in the NFL.
So we have just completed 7 straight agreement picks between Pete Prisco and Brady Quinn.
That's not good for the people.
It's not for, well, yeah, but it's not across the board. Right. We've just entered a portion where you guys all agree. Now we're finally getting to a game where you guys do have difference in opinions. Short number, it's 2 teams coming off wins. You have Dallas, that statement win against the Eagles. Buffalo at Arrowhead getting with the win. So Dallas is catching 2.5 points. Brady, I'm going to give you first word here. You like the points here. Do you like Dallas, maybe even money line? Take me through the thought process.
Yeah, no, I think Dallas on the money line would make some sense here, in part because the Bills' defense, even though they looked pretty good last week versus Kansas City's not the same offensive team that we've seen in years past. Offensively speaking, I think the Dallas Cowboys can get pressure on Josh Allen. I think they can get him to force some turnovers, and especially if he's scrambling and playing from behind, I'm not sure that's a recipe you want with the way this Dallas Cowboys defense has been able to turn turnovers into points. So I'll gladly take the 2.5 points. I don't think they're going to need it. I also think this game is going to be as fast-paced as Pete thinks it is. He thinks it's going to hit the over. I think this one could be one that hits the under. Maybe the weather plays a little bit of a factor here as well.
By the way, I thought they'd hit the over last week in Kansas City as my best bet. It didn't come close to it. It was never threatened. I do think they're going to hit the over. I think both offenses will play well here. And here's my theory on this. Desperation, we talked about this, it kind of takes over for a team playing for a seed, and the Bills are desperate. If they win out, they're winning the division. Basically. I mean, that's big happenings for a team that a lot of people counted out. And by the way, we've said it for a month now. Nobody wants them in the postseason. Nobody.
All right, 1 minute left in this segment, so 30 seconds here. Sunday Night Football, Baltimore laying 3.5 at Jacksonville. Pete, you're going to fade the Jags here?
I am. I think their defense is awful right now. They can't stop anybody. Lamar Jackson's going to go there and just pick them to shreds. I think they'll score because the Ravens defense had problems last week as well. I think it's a higher scoring game. I do like the over in the game, but I think the Ravens win it and cover.
I'm with Pete. I like the over as well, and I think we saw some flashes of what Zay Flowers is capable with in this Baltimore Ravens offense last week. Hopefully we see more of that continuing in the future. But the Jacksonville Jaguars defensive struggles, and I also don't know how healthy Trevor Lawrence is. Again, that high ankle sprain isn't out of the back of my mind, so I'll lay the 3.5 points here with the Baltimore Ravens on the road.
Okay. These two guys always do a great job. They're so entertaining. So is the Early Edge crew. Every single day, multiple times a day. Make sure to scan that QR code to get their picks and props, getting you ready for a very fun and hopefully profitable weekend. Home stretch times in terms of our NFL coverage here this hour, CBS Sports HQ. Eagles' largest losses with Jalen Hurts. Now, he's got 4 career games they lost by 20 or more points. 2 of them have now come in back-to-back weeks against the Niners at home and then, of course, at Arlington against Dallas. By the way, I'll give you this one note here. No team has won the Super Bowl after losing back-to-back games by 15 or more points. Talk about stats that matter. Home stretch time with Brady, Quinn, and Pete Prisco. So it's interesting because even the most diehard Philly fan might be a little scared that the Philadelphia Eagles are 3.5-point favorites against the Seahawks here. So as we take a look at the game here, Brady, what are your thoughts on the number here? Do you want to lay it or grab it?
No, I'm laying the points here with the Philadelphia Eagles. I think this is a bounce-back spot for them. The Seattle Seahawks defense isn't playing quite as good, I think, as they would hope to be at this point in time, especially with the addition of Leonard Williams. On the flip side, is Geno Smith starting? And if he is, how healthy is that groin injury? I mean, we made these picks just a week ago and thinking that Geno Smith was going to be the starter, and then all of a sudden, late in the week, you saw that line movement. You heard rumors that Drew Lock was probably going to end up taking over as a starting quarterback, and this team has not fared well with Drew Lock as their starter. So, look, I understand the Eagles have had their issues, in particular in the secondary. And if Geno Smith does end up playing, that's more of a concern here. So that's why I think the under is the safest play. But I'll lay the 3.5 points here with the Philadelphia Eagles.
Yeah, I hate bucking the back-to-back road game trend, but I'm going to because I think Brady touched on it. The defense has been really bad for Seattle, and, you know, we don't know who's going to play quarterback. So I'll take the Eagles minus the points as well.
Okay, wrap things up a little over 30 seconds. Best bet time. Time to get off the schneid and get back in the win column. What do you got?
Yeah, I need one in the worst way. I'm going to get one because I'm going to take the Jets. I think the game's lower scoring. I think the Jets will play great on defense, limit a little bit what the Dolphins do. Dolphins win the game, but you're giving me a big number. I'll take it.
There we go, Pete. I'm going to take the under of San Francisco and Arizona of 47.5 total points. Arizona with extra time to prepare for this one. I think they'll have a good defensive game plan early on for stopping or slowing down the San Francisco offense. And on the flip side, San Francisco's been on a terror, but this Arizona Cardinals defense has overachieved this year. So I think it stays under that number.
Todd Furman 2.0. He's taking totals now. I mean, the man is running scared. I mean, my gosh, Brady, what are you doing? You're Todd Furman.
Hold on. 8 underdogs won outright last week, the most in the NFL in any one given week this season. Okay, you got lucky last week, Pete. Let's just call it.
Here we go.
I know this is a running joke that we make, but we can make just as much money on totals. I'm going to start defending totals a little bit more here. But yes, to your point,
I had a total last week and it went wrong.
And it didn't run. Okay.
I'm off the total.
There you go. Best bets under for Brady Quinn in the desert and grabbing the points there in Miami for Pete Prisco and the Jets.